This section, we will focus on the key trends of today's world trade. According with World Trade Statistical Review 2018, WTO members' merchandise exports reached 17.73 trillion US dollar in 2017, increased by 11% in value terms, recorded its strongest growth in 6 years. Exports of commercial services reached 5.19 trillion, increased by 8%. Current world trade had some key features and changes. The first, world trade dominated by few big countries, and the scenarios in merchandise trade and services trade are different. In 2017, the top 10 merchandise exporters accounted for 52% of the world total. The top 5 accounted for more than 1/3. The top 3, that's China, USA, and Germany, accounted for over 30%. China ranked number 1, accounting for 13%. As for commercial service trade, the top 10 exporters account for 53% of the world total. The top 3, that's USA, UK, and Germany, account for 27%. USA ranked number 1. From this, we can find that advanced countries had a stronger competency in commercial service trade and service industries. Secondly, commercial services trade becomes more and more important. The percentage of commercial service trade on world total trade in 2005 is 19.59%. In 2004, is 21.7%, while in 2013, it reached 22.94%. According with WTO's estimation, by 2030, the share of service trade on total world trade will achieve 25%. What's more, in WTO's negotiations, nowadays members also pay more attention on service trade compared with before, because the issues of service trade usually combined with investment, so the negotiations about service trade becoming more and more sensitive and complicated. The third, manufactured goods still the most important content of world trade. Since even service trade is becoming more and more important, we must keep in mind that the manufactured goods still the most important part of world trade. Figure 3 shows that in 2013, manufactured goods accounted for 70% of all merchandise exports. Even service trade includes, manufactured goods still accounted for 54% of all exports. Among manufactured goods, chemical products, office and telecom products, automotive products, and clothing and textiles accounted for 44% of exports of manufactured goods in 2017. The fourth, developing countries are becoming more important in world trade. According with World Trade Statistical Review 2018, developing economies exported 43% of world merchandise exports in 2016 and 2017. What's more, in Figure 5, we can find that from 2000 to 2016, the share of developing countries in world merchandise exports has increased obviously. According with World Trade Report 2018, it will expand to be 57% by 2030. The fifth, merchandise trade between developing economies has increased in the past decade. In Figure 6, we can find that from 2005 to 2015, merchandise trade between developing economies increased from 41% to 52%. Although the share in 2016 fell back a little bit, while still exceeded 50%. This shows that South-South trade becoming more important than a decade ago. The sixth, fluctuation of commodity price affects value of trade deeply. From the comparison of Figure 7 and Figure 8, we can find that from 2005 to 2015, the change range of the value of both merchandise trade usually larger than the volume one. Why? The key reason is that the price of a commodity has big influence on the chain of world trade development. Usually, when world economy is hot, world trade volume will expand. At the same time, the commodity price also rises. So, the value of world trade expands more. Oppositely, when world economy is cold, world trade volume will shrink. At the same time, the commodity price fell down, so the value of world trade shrinks more. Because the commodity prices sometimes fluctuate fiercely, so usually they will affect the value of world trade deeply. For example, in 2015, even the volume of world merchandise trade kept expanding a little bit, but because the commodity price, especially energy prices, dropped too much, so the growth rate of the value of world trade changed to be negative. So we must pay attention on the fluctuation of commodity prices, especially the prices of crude oil, iron ore, food, and so on. In fact, how to deal with the fluctuation of commodity prices usually among the key topic list of G20 summit. The seventh, with the development of global value chain, trade in value added emerging as a sensitive and important topic and attracts more and more attention. But what's trade in value added? And for this, we must get to know that the goods and the services we buy are composed of inputs from various countries around the world. However, the flows of goods and services within these global production chains are not always reflected in conventional measures of international trade. For example, let's assume that country A imports parts to produce and export a mobile phone. The imported parts for 1 unit for mobile phone was $90, and the export price per unit is $100. Conventionally, this $100 is accounted to be country A's export. However, deduct the value of imported parts, the value generated from country A is only $10. So, the traditional calculation usually misleading the understanding about global trade relationship. The development of trade in value added addresses this issue by considering the value added by each country in the production of goods and services that are consumed worldwide and provide a new insight into the commercial relations between nations. Taking chemical industry as a case, in Figure 9, the trade in value added data shows that around 62% of the value added in chemicals exported in 2011 originated from other industries supplying inputs to chemical firms to allow them to produce and export. The share of upstream services inputs in the overall value added in chemical exports reached 38%, among which the wholesale and retail trade industry represented 12%. Research and development and other business activities accounted for more than 10%, and the transport and storage services accounted for 4% of its value-added exports. Among primary industry inputs, raw materials such as mining and quarrying products are essential for the production of chemicals. These accounted for 11% of the value added. Figure 10 shows the domestic and the foreign value added contained in chemicals exports of selected economies in 2011. From this, we can find that large economies such as the United States or Japan have a high share of domestic content in the chemicals exports, while the Republic of Korea had the lowest share of domestic value-added content. So, trade in value-added provides a more accurate way to understand the trade relationship among countries. For example, some countries accuse China because every year China exports too much and has tremendous trade surplus. But in fact, not all the value of the export generated from China. Lastly, digital technologies are reshaping world trade. Digital technologies such as artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, additive manufacturing, and the blockchain has fundamentally reshaped our economies, slashing the cost of acquiring and trading information. It has fueled the digital revolution, fundamentally changing the ways in which we communicate, consume, and produce. And it has profoundly transformed international trade in terms of what we trade, how we trade, and who is trading. The WTO set the theme of World Trade Report 2018 as the future of world trade, how digital technologies are transforming global commerce, just shows the importance of digital technology in the future development of world trade. In conclusion, from this section, we get to know that world trade dominated by few big countries. Even service trade is becoming more and more important, but the manufactured goods still the most important part of world trade. Developing countries are becoming more important in world trade, and the merchandise trade between developing economies has increased in the past decade. Fluctuation of commodity price affects value of trade deeply. Trade in value added provides a more accurate way to understand the trade relationship among countries. And lastly, digital technologies are reshaping world trade.